This is a great image, I think, of people mining bauxite to make aluminium in the Amazon rainforest. So we're basically destroying a pristine habitat. It's been releases lots of toxins, and in the process we're destroying and fragmenting the lungs of our planet. So that seems just not a great idea. And then at the back end of this, all our lovely buildings that we build and design and spent a long time creating and use loads of resources, actually 30, 40 years down the line on some of the projects I'm working on, they're being demolished. And what's left, as you can see, is actually not very useful. So all the aggregates there, for example, will just be used as secondary aggregates, and that will be used for non-structural uses. And even the metals, which we think these are highly, should be highly recyclable, actually they usually end up being lower grade alloys because they're contaminated by the coatings and other metals. So you're sort of really, everything gets downcycled from buildings, not really recycled. So you're not keeping the value of it all. And in the process, we're thinking, why are we demolishing these buildings in the first place? Why they've got such a short life in some situations? So that's the linear economy, and that's where we are. So what should we be doing? Well, I think taking the ideas of the Ellen MacArthur ideas and all the other ideas around about the circular economy, we're rapidly getting to this idea that we should be thinking about retaining existing buildings for longer, and asking questions about, can we refit, can we refurbish our buildings, as are the smaller circles there. And obviously then designing them to do that. And then the three outer circles are really showing what you might do with the components of the building. So can we reclaim and reuse the components of the building, which we're really bad at the moment? Can we remanufacture big elements of the building? I mean, a lot of the building services, there's lots of opportunity to remanufacture chillers and boilers and all sorts of things, which generally doesn't really happen. And then the last resort is the outer layer, which is really looking at, can we easily and readily recycle rather than downcycle the materials from the building, and for the biological components of the building, can we compost those? So they have to be pure and non-toxic to be able to do that. And then on top of that, I've just added in the design principles that I talk about in the book, which is really aimed at new buildings and major refurbishments, really saying, okay, so can we design this building in layers so that you can peel off layers and replace bits as need be, but also thinking about the lifespan, which I'll come to in a second. And then there's several other principles there. I'll just touch on a couple of them today because I've only got a few minutes, and then Danielle is also going to pick on a couple. And then lastly, around the outside of the diagram is really trying to rethink about what we mean by waste, and turning waste into resource, I think, is really important. So let's get rid of the idea of waste and think about how we can keep the life of materials and products into the distant future. And then also the new business models like leasing and that sort of thing is I think a really interesting idea, and moving away from the idea that we have to dig stuff out of the ground, consume it for a few years, and then throw it away. Whereas actually, if we leased it, or if we had buyback and all these sorts of ideas that are around in the circular economy, we could be keeping the value of materials and resources much longer. So a great example as a project I looked at for the book was Make Architects went to this client who had decided that they were going to have to demolish this building and start again, and Make Architects said, no, I don't think you need to. I think you can refurbish this. We can add lots of value to it. And in the process, they saved a lot of money, and they knocked a year off the program because they didn't have to go back into the ground and do foundations and start from scratch, which I thought was an excellent example. And of course, there's masses of examples of refurbishment, but this is a good example of a 1960s block of buildings that looked like they were destined to be demolished. But actually, you've got things in the building that could be there for 100 years, like the structure of the building. We've got lots of buildings that are still here 100, 200, several hundred years later. But then the internals, we have the stuff in the building, and we've got things like carpets that might be replaced after 2 years if someone doesn't like the colour. So we've got this massive difference in timescales and longevity and durability of the parts of the building. And the idea of this whole building in layers concept is that you can peel off and layers and then add back new facades, for example, onto an existing structure, or you could put new internals into the building. But the danger is you don't really want to start tearing out finishes and things to replace services if you can help it, and start creating lots of waste in the process. So the building and layers concept underpins a lot of the ideas of the circular economy, and equally you might well apply leasing concepts to things like furniture or carpets or partitions, but the idea of leasing the foundations of a building, for example, is not really a great concept, I think.